Every year it's the same thing. December arrives, and with it that classic image, three men dressed in exotic clothes, shining crowns on their heads, kneeling before a baby in a manger. The lights flash, the music plays, and they all repeat the same story they've heard since childhood. Three kings, coming from the east, guided by a star. They arrived on the night of Jesus' birth. They brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The end. It's beautiful. It's traditional. It's comforting. But here's the problem. This comfortable version you know is full of errors. The Bible never said there were three. It never called these men kings. And it never stated that they arrived on the same night Jesus was born. So why do we keep repeating this story? Because over the centuries, tradition has replaced the biblical text. And when you go directly to the Gospel of Matthew, the only place where this story appears, you discover something surprising. The three wise men were far more fascinating, complex, and important than any nativity scene ever managed to portray. These men did not simply come to deliver gifts. They crossed deserts, faced dangers, defied a murderous king, and recognized something that even the people of Israel were about to lose. The visit of the Magi to Jesus was not merely a gesture of honor. It was a prophetic declaration that would echo throughout the history of Christianity. But who were these men, really? The Bible uses a specific word, Magi. In the original Greek, the word is magoi, and that changes everything. These men were not rulers. They did not wear crowns. They did not command armies. They were wise men, scholars, men who dedicated their lives to observing the heavens, interpreting signs, and seeking meaning in the stars. They likely came from Persia, Mesopotamia, or perhaps Arabia, regions where astronomical knowledge was advanced, where ancient prophecies circulated among peoples who awaited signs from the heavens. These sages of the East were not kings in the political sense, but they were nobles in the intellectual and spiritual sense. Now imagine the real scene, not a stable on the night of the birth, but months later, perhaps even 2 years. The star had already appeared, and these men, after long discussions and calculations, decided to leave, without guarantees, without certainties. Just a silent conviction that something extraordinary had happened. They prepare themselves, they gather provisions, they organize caravans, they leave behind comfort, security, and prestige. And then they follow. Not because they were ordered to, not because they expected reward, but because something within them recognized that this sign in the sky was unlike any other. The journey would be long, dangerous, uncertain, but for these men of the sky, there was no choice. The mystery of the three wise men begins here, not in what they did, but in what they left behind in pursuit of something greater. And what they were seeking was about to shake empires. These wise men did not study the stars out of curiosity. They sought meaning, order, purpose. In a world dominated by violent empires and constant injustice, they looked to the sky for signs that something greater was in motion, and they knew the prophecies. Ancient texts circulated throughout the East, including Hebrew writings brought during the Babylonian exile, prophecies about a king who would be born in Judah, a ruler whose authority would not come from swords, but from something eternal. Numbers chapter 24 verse 17 said, "A star will come out of Jacob, a scepter will rise out of Israel." These words were not merely poetry. For the Magi, they were spiritual coordinates, a map written in the stars, awaiting the right moment to be revealed. Then, one night, something happened. A different light appeared in the sky. It wasn't an ordinary comet. It wasn't just any planetary conjunction. It was a sign that these men recognized immediately. The prophecy of Jesus' birth was being fulfilled. They didn't hesitate. They didn't debate for months. The decision was made. They would go, because men who spend their entire lives searching for truth cannot ignore it when they find it. The Star of Bethlehem wasn't just an astronomical phenomenon. It was a calling, and this calling demanded a response that would change everything. Look up on a clear night. See the stars. Now imagine being someone who has dedicated decades to studying every celestial movement, every pattern, every anomaly. And then, suddenly, you see something you've never seen before. The Star of Bethlehem did not appear by chance. It appeared exactly at the moment the prophecy said it would. And for those wise men of the East, this was more than coincidence. It was divine revelation transcending cultures, languages, and borders. Some scholars suggest it was a triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. Others speak of a supernova. But the Bible isn't concerned with technical astronomy. The Gospel of Matthew simply records, "We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." What mattered wasn't the phenomenon, it was the meaning. That light in the sky was announcing the birth of a king, not just any king. A king who would redefine the very concept of authority. A king whose kingdom would have no geographical boundaries, but would transcend hearts, generations, and nations. And here's something fascinating. Even before Israel fully recognized who Jesus was, foreigners were already bowing down before him. The revealed biblical history shows that salvation was never exclusive. It was always universal. So if you're enjoying this journey through little-known biblical truth, leave a like now and subscribe to the channel, because we still have so much more to discover. The star guided these men through deserts, mountains, and dark nights. But the real challenge would not be the physical journey. It would be the confrontation that awaited them upon reaching their destination. Leaving was one thing. Staying was something else entirely. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The sun scorched during the day, the cold bit at night. And with every step, doubt could have crept in. What if we're wrong? What if it's just an ordinary star? But they didn't return. Because true faith isn't the absence of doubt. It's choosing to move forward even when complete certainty doesn't exist. These wise men from the East left behind respected positions, material comfort, and family security, all because they believed that something eternal was happening. And here's the irony. While they were traveling in search of a king, the true king of Israel, Herod, was completely oblivious to what was about to happen. Herod ruled with fear, paranoia, and violence. He had already killed members of his own family on suspicion of treason. His crown was maintained by brute force and flimsy political agreements. The wise men did not know this yet. They followed the star with hope. They crossed borders, traversed hostile territories, and finally arrived in Jerusalem, the city of the great king. Of course, they thought, if a king was born in Israel, he must be in the palace. So, innocently, they asked a question that would cause terror. Where is the newborn king of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him. This simple question triggered a wave of panic that would end in tragedy. But it would also reveal something profound about two types of power, one that governs by force and another that transforms through presence. And the clash between these two powers was about to happen. The Gospel of Matthew records, "When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him." Think about that. A man who controlled armies, palaces, and unlimited resources was afraid of a baby. Why? Because tyrants always fear what they cannot control. Herod knew the prophecies. He knew the texts that spoke of a Messiah, an anointed king who would restore Israel. And for a man whose crown depended on Rome, any mention of another king was an existential threat. Then Herod summoned the chief priests and scribes. "Where should the Christ be born?" They immediately replied, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it is written by the prophet." Micah chapter 5 verse 2 was clear. From Bethlehem would come a ruler who would shepherd Israel. Herod now had the location. But he was cunning. Instead of revealing his murderous intentions, he secretly summoned the wise men. He asked them exactly when the star had appeared. Then, with a false smile, he said, "Go and find out about the child. When you find him, let me know, so that I too may go and worship him." Lies, manipulation, violence disguised as piety. That was earthly power. That was the kingdom built on blood and betrayal. and the mages, without realizing it, were being used as instruments for a massacre. But they left. The star they had seen in the east reappeared and guided them until it stopped over the place where the child was. Matthew says, when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness something that would defy all logic of human power, because the king they sought was not on a throne. He was in the arms of a humble woman in a simple house in Bethlehem. Imagine the scene through the eyes of these wise men. They expected a palace, guards, pomp, wealth. After all, the star had guided them there to find a king. But when they entered the house, there was nothing that matched human expectations of royalty. No throne, no crown, no army, just Mary, Joseph, and a child. The Gospel of Matthew simply records, and when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. Think about it. Men of knowledge, culture, and influence bowed before a poor child. Why? Because true greatness isn't measured by gold, palaces, or political power. It's recognized by the presence of something eternal. That was no ordinary encounter. It was the fulfillment of centuries of prophecy. It was the birth of Jesus, not just as a historical event, but as the breaking forth of heaven and invading earth. And these foreigners, coming from distant cultures, were the first to acknowledge it publicly. While Israel slept, while religious leaders remained indifferent, while Herod plotted murder, these men from the east knelt, not because they were forced, not because they expected reward, but because something within them recognized the truth. Then they opened their treasures, and what they offered were not random gifts. Each item carried a profound meaning, a prophetic message that would echo throughout the history of Christianity. Gold, frankincense, myrrh, 3 gifts, 3 revelations. And what they symbolized would forever change how we understand who Jesus really was. Gold was the metal of kings, a symbol of royalty, power, and eternal rule. By offering gold, the wise men declared, "This child is king, not only of Israel, but of all nations." His kingdom would have no borders. His authority would not depend on armies or palaces. Jesus was the promised king, the one who would rule with justice and truth. Incense was used in the temple, burned before God as a symbol of prayer, worship, and priestly mediation. By offering incense, the Magi declared, "This child is a priest." He would be the bridge between God and humanity, the only mediator capable of restoring the relationship broken by sin. As Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15 says, he would be a high priest capable of sympathizing with our weaknesses. Myrrh was used in burials, a bitter resin applied to the bodies of the dead. By offering myrrh, the Magi declared, perhaps without fully realizing it, something profound: this child will die. His mission would not end in earthly glory. He would bear the sins of the world. He would suffer. He would be crucified. And through his death, he would bring life. 3 gifts, 3 identities: king, priest, sacrifice, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The meaning goes far beyond material honor. They are theological revelations packaged in the form of an offering. These men understood something that many in Israel had not yet grasped. The Messiah would not come merely to rule politically. He would come to redeem spiritually, and his work would involve glory, mediation, and suffering. Then the wise men did something surprising. Matthew records that, warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their country by another way. They obeyed, they protected the child, and after that, they disappeared. The Bible never mentions these men again, and this silence carries a powerful lesson that few realize. Think about it. These men traveled hundreds of miles. They confronted a murderous king. They recognized the Messiah before anyone else in Israel. They offered prophetic gifts. And then they disappear from the biblical narrative completely. No names, no details, no subsequent stories. The Gospel of Matthew simply says that they went another way and are never seen again. Why? Because the story was never about them. It was about those they recognized, The forgotten biblical characters often carry the deepest lessons: humility, obedience, and the willingness to fulfill a role without seeking eternal recognition. These wise men did not found churches. They did not write gospels. They did not become leaders of movements. They did exactly what they needed to do: witness, worship, and protect. After that, they returned to their lands, probably transformed forever, but in silence. And this teaches us something essential about true faith. Not all obedience comes with applause. Not every act of faith is publicly recorded. Sometimes the greatest impact happens when we fulfill our role without demanding recognition. The Gospel of Matthew, when explained, reveals that these silent figures were essential. They represented the pagan nations recognizing the Savior before the chosen people themselves. They showed that Jesus' message was never exclusive, it was always universal. And while they faded from the Bible, their actions echoed throughout history, because they were the first foreigners to worship Jesus, the first to declare his kingship, the first to understand that this child would change everything. But do we truly understand the full impact of what they did? The three wise men did not rule nations. They did not conquer territories. They did not leave monuments with their names engraved on them. But they did something that no emperor ever managed to do. They recognized the true king before the world was ready to see him. While Herod plotted assassination, while Rome ruled by force, while religious leaders debated prophecies without realizing they were being fulfilled before their very eyes, these men from the East knelt. And with this simple gesture, they redefined what power, authority, and royalty mean. They proved that faith knows no boundaries. That truth can be recognized even by those who come from afar, that God is not limited to one nation, one culture, or one people. The visit of the Magi to Jesus was the first public declaration that the gospel was for everyone. And here's the part I want you to never forget. Those men didn't need extraordinary signs after that encounter. They didn't ask for additional confirmation. They didn't demand more proof. They saw, they recognized, they adored, and they left transformed. This is true faith. It's not based on daily miracles or constant confirmations. It's based on a real encounter with Jesus. And when that encounter happens, everything changes. Priorities change, roots change, lives change. So the question that remains isn't about the wise men, it's about you. Are you willing to follow a sign even without guarantees? To acknowledge truth even when it appears unexpectedly? To bow before Jesus even if it requires abandoning comfort, tradition, or expectations? The three wise men were not kings, but they were kings in the only sense that truly matters. Kings who recognized the King of Kings. So here we are, at the end of a journey that began with a Christmas image and ended with a truth that transforms everything. The three wise men were not what you thought they were, but they were far more important than any tradition could capture. They teach us that seeking truth requires courage, that true faith doesn't depend on constant confirmation, that recognizing Jesus may require abandoning the safe path and following unknown routes. And that, in the end, what matters is not how many people know your name, but whether you have recognized the name above all names. Now, I want to know from you, what surprised you most about this story? Was it discovering that they weren't kings? Was it understanding the meaning of the gifts? Or was it realizing that these men disappeared because they fulfilled their role without seeking glory? Leave your comment. Share this video with someone who needs to know the truth behind tradition. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next profound biblical stories we'll explore together. And remember, faith isn't about repeating traditions. It's about encountering Jesus, recognizing him, and allowing that encounter to completely transform your life. Because in the end, the three wise men didn't change history because they were powerful. They changed history because they bowed before the only one who was truly powerful. And that choice is still available to you today.